So, how are we doing today, Jester?
Uh, Today's been a bit busy, but it's been going good.
It's going good. So you're running, obviously against Blight, for the presidential
Yeah.
candidacy. It was officially announced that it was just you two. So, let's get like your kind of state of the address of like what's going on.
So, is this like a why I'm running question,
Yeah,
or
kind of
like
like a just like give us how like your candidacy's looking so far.
I would say it's turning out to be pretty competitive. But I'm running because I feel strongly about the Brazilian economy and that we need a president that can prioritize that.
Yeah.
I also believe that although I'm probably not the best person for the job, no one else stepped up. And as a citizen of Julia, I believe it is our duty to try to do the best and most for the policing.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Um, speaking on your campaign, as you said, it's very focused around the economic side. Now, there's a lot of criticism for that kind of model of governance, saying that like because the economy isn't necessarily a required thing, that it's kind of pointless to sink so much time the into the economy. What's your rebuttal to those kinds of responses?
I do not believe the economy should be at all mandatory, but I do believe it is a great way to expand Julia. For example, if you were a newer member, it might be harder to get to the Senate or into parliament dynamics. So an easy way to start to get involved in Julia, I feel like, is the private sector. Stuff like writing for tip, or maybe a casino opens up and they want clerk for what they're doing. I feel like it'd be a great opportunity for new people to get involved in Julia without having like big name recognition.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important for people to kind of have a foot in the door and being able to prove themselves so that they can get established within the community. That's how a lot of us got our comeuppance.
Exactly.
Exactly. I will say though, it's very easy to say stuff like "I'm going to fix the economy." It's very easy to say that, but when we're operating in a Discord server, it's a lot harder to create scarcity and
You
supply
just,
and demand and
you know,
these basic fundamentals of an economy. So like, it's my opinion that you're just
sorry, can you say that again?
Oh yeah. So
I
in
got you.
in Discord, it's hard to get the supply and the demand, the resources, products, services that you need in a functioning economy. So I think it's kind of um, you're just role playing an economy if you don't have any of that. But if we want to actually start thinking about an economy, right? You need those services. Are you interested at all in making sure that the private sector can establish itself?
So I believe that the private sector has already started stuff. We've seen news explode recently, and although there are definitely limitations in the ability of the private sector, as we are in the Discord server, I think it is their responsibility to affirm to that, like form into that. Uh, like for example, no one is going to want to buy houses in a Discord server necessarily. But the estates that we've set up are very appealing to organizations or people that want to set something up or get their voice heard.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe that roleplay should play all that big of a role in our economy because although the entire thing is based on roleplay, essentially, I don't want people to get involved in the economy and then just think to themselves, oh, I'm getting tied up in absolutely nothing. Why am I spending time on this?
Yeah. So, what's the government's role in establishing a better private sector?
The government's role, in my mind, is by providing, like, for example, if a news organization is going to pop up that's offering, I don't know, paid news articles, we need regulation on, you know, pirating, I guess would be the word for it, where people just publicize those paid articles and then no one needs to pay for the services. Government needs to step in there and say, hey, don't distribute this. We need you to pay for
Okay. I
it.
think that's an excellent way to generate income for individuals, but I think having money in the server is kind of useless unless if you have things to spend it on. And that's the fundamental issue we have here as a Discord server is that the only things we we have to spend things on are features within the server, and we've already established pretty early on that you know the economy is going to be optional, so you can't like buy rights, you can't like buy the ability to speak. Um, so, what are some ways that your administration can create more things for us to spend our money on?
One way the government can influence the private sector is the grant system. So if anyone wants a grant for then $10,000, it would be my job, my administration's job, to provide funding if they want that from the government. In
For
terms of what people would actually, like what companies I could imagine popping up, that's a bit more of a, I'll have to think a little bit about that, but definitely we've seen Blappa, I believe, is setting up like a gambling thing, which I imagine is very profitable and probably good for our economy. Stuff like that could pop up more.
I mean, we've seen gambling places come and fall throughout Julie's time. I don't think a gambling site is going to be the answer to the economy.
I don't believe it's the exclusive answer to the economy.
No.
It's going to require a variety of different things. We're
Yeah.
currently on an uptrend, and my goals are to continue that and to explore more ideas in the economy expanding into more of a prominent role, not being mandatory.
Yeah. 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 But, I mean, as everyone says, the fundamental thing is you need to get products and services out there, and you were talking about grants for people to be more interested in sharing those things. Um, I think it's really just a matter of it's not. This is my opinion, and obviously the people listening out there can disagree, and they're allowed to. But in my opinion, it's not the government's place to um, you know decide how that's going to happen. Just some entrepreneur needs to go. I actually have a really novel idea on how people can spend their money, um, but no one's been able to do that. So I think that's the fundamental issue our economy faces.
And it's not necessarily a requirement for you to go and ask for grant money from the government. What I'm saying is that it's a good way if like it's a new user that has great ideas for the company and they might not be able to get funding from, I don't know, people like Border, which have a massive amount of money but just aren't panning it out. You go to the government and say, hey, I have this great idea. I would like some funding for it. I will say the system has failed some. I feel like there has to be more regulations on grants because, like, I remember during the Anthony administration, a 40,000 grant for bank was approved, and the bank just hasn't really done much of anything.
And is that a major issue?
I think it is an issue if the government's budget is being depleted on grants that aren't being used on anything. I believe that the bill does specifically have preventions for this that just have not been used at all for purposes that of like that stuff not happening.
All right. Um, Here, if I were to ask you, and besides the economy, we've hammered enough about the economy. If I were to ask you if there's one thing about Julia that if that you could just fix magically, right? Um, what would it be? And as I said, don't say the economy. We've hammered the economy enough.
I wouldn't say the economy regardless. I would say the number one thing to fix in Julia would hmm, that's a really interesting question. Number one thing, burnout. If someone could magically fix that, that would be amazing.
Fix what?
It's not realistic. Burnout.
Burnout. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people get stressed from Julia, or they, you know, just over time continue to put too much work or time into this. If someone could fix that, that would be amazing. But
I mean, as potentially the president, right? We're gonna work in a hypothetical where you're elected. Um, as the president, do you think you have some sort of position or even responsibility to try to move the even the culture itself in a direction that can help steer away from burnout? Also, you could propose legislation to try to ease it, but fundamentally it's a community cultural thing. So, how do you see yourself doing that in the presidential role?
I do definitely see the president as more of a cultural figure. The job itself, although it is demanding, uh, the Senate holds a lot of power over the president. So the cultural aspect of it definitely takes up a lot on the job. I feel like in my term to amend that problem by being the cultural leader, being calm and stepping back when you two, those are two things that are very important. And I feel like a lot of like during Jasha's administration, a lot of their efforts about preventing it have worked and have advised the population through like announcements or something that hey, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to relax and not put as much time to Julia as you think you do. Don't get too stressed about it. I feel like that's the number one thing that we really need to continue pushing and you know
Yeah. Well, like what like specific things I'm trying to lead into? What specific things would you as president do to help?
I feel like it's really hard to legislate a culture or a
Right.
community. Um, but I feel like one thing that we could do is by expanding what we know we can do. I know there's a way that you can request the admin's time you out for a certain amount of time. I personally have used it in the past over Wordle. That's not something many people know about. I was surprised when I first heard about it. I feel like expanding uh, recognition of the current stuff we have in place to
Mm-hmm.
uh, help culture and community that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I even think stuff like even pioneering more community nights, right? I think ideally for me, I'd love to see people in VC every night. We just don't have that as much as we used to. Um, I mean, that's kind of what I'd like to see out of the community. And
VC is fun, and I feel like that is one thing that we should try to do more of. I agree with you on that.
yeah, and um, and I was kind of trying to lead you in this direction, but to be a leader is like you lead by example, right?
Yeah.
So how I'd like to see anyone who takes community seriously, how I'd like to see any leader do that, is to do it themselves. People will follow. I mean, even if you look stupid sometimes, being the only one in VC for hours, someone will see that and join, and then you got two people, then you got three, and then now you have more community engagement.
All right. Yeah.
Sorry, this is your interview.
I'll hear you out.
I'm
No, no, this
stepping
is
over
good.
too much.
The purpose of an interview was for me to try to understand. Which I can totally get that.
Yeah.
I will say during my administration, I will try to be in decent. It's an important part, I believe, for the president to be hearing people out.
Yeah.
That's one thing that, yeah.
Yeah. Also, a lot of critics of um, a lot of critics of the economy, or just like a more economic standpoint, will say that um, by incentivizing the economy, you're kind of indirectly putting away from the community aspect. What sort of response do you have to that kind of narrative?
So the difference in thought here, I believe, is what Julia is. People who would prioritize the economy more believe that Julia is a polysim with a community in it, while people who believe more in in community initiatives are view Julia as a community server with a polysim in it. And both sides have very valid points, but I will say I do believe that both can coexist with each other.
Yeah,
Although I feel strongly about the economy. That does not mean the community should be
absolutely,
like ignored by or my administration.
absolutely. Um, you will have a very hard time trying to find anyone who advocates for just community or just polysim. Because I don't know. Anyway, and anytime I have these kinds of discussions, people get very caught away in the extremes of the argument of like this. It's we can't just be community. We're a political simulator. I'm not advocating for removing that. Anyway, all that to say of people just get really lost in the extremism of an argument. I think.
I do believe the divide has gotten quite far, and that although I do generally agree more with people on the polyism community side, I do not believe that people on the community side are wrong in their thoughts or that their ideas should be set aside.
I think it's like the difference between center left and center right. Like you have a little disagreements on some stuff, but by and large, you have the same beliefs.
Yeah, it's very much a spectrum of in the economy versus community side.
Yeah. Anyway, but for the viewers out there, if either one, if Blight wins or Jester wins, no one's gonna die. There's no
No, not at all.
there's no fight for the battle
If
of the
Light
nation here.
if Light gets elected, I'm happy. If I get elected, I'm always happy. And I would urge my supporters to have the same thoughts.
Yeah. Speaking of, there's been some criticism, parentheses by me, of JPP for potentially being a voting bloc, and I mean that in the sense of when they hit the polls, they just see the JPP by your name, and without being engaged in the discussions and debates been going around, they will just vote for you because of the JPP without knowing your stances on things very well. That being said, how do you view the current state of partisan politics in that sense of of people just going to the polls and just name brand recognition?
Whenever I try to vote, I always think of what would their job look like. Uh, and although in parties you tend to agree with those who share the same label with you, I always, when I'm at polls, try to vote for an independent or a position candidate who I believe will do a good job. Because in the end of it, we both want a better Julia, and typically we're able to find common ground in that. As to the criticisms of JPB itself, we have a lot of internal discussion in our server. I feel like a lot of the partisan voting comes from you knowing the people in your party more, and you have more in-depth discussion about policy and whatever else, and your job when you get to it. Do I believe that partisan voting is a good or positive thing for Julia? I do not believe that.
All right. Um, Now, looking into your potential administration, obviously we've had some changes um, from previous administrations. One of them being the fact that the Senate is now the job pool of your cabinet picks. Um, looking into your administration, what out of the current Senate, which cabinet picks are you going to be eyeing up?
I feel like for most of them, we can keep it pretty straightforward. We've seen a lot of success, I feel like, about our current picks for our organization. The big one, because my vice president is Jake, would be the administrator of the register, because Jake would no longer be able to hold that position. There, I would nominate Marlon, not because of his alignment to me, but because he is genuinely really experienced in administrative register, being the uh, what's it called, deputy of the register for a while now.
Yeah. All right. And your vice presidential candidate pick, remind me who that is again?
Jake.
Jake. And I'm curious, why is Jake your vice presidential candidate?
I feel like he brings a lot of experience to the table. He's a senator right now, and he used to be the president of Macedonia. Like there's a good foreign policy aspect of that, even if it's not with Macedonia. It shows that he can come across policy lines. Uh, Obviously, coming from Macedonia to Julia, he's also just a pretty fun guy, and I believe he's a person who can execute the powers of the vice president well.
Yes. I'm assuming you don't have any major criticism for the other ticket, but I mean, obviously you are still running against them, and no thing should be taken personally. Um, but what are some of the major failings that you see in the other ticket? Obviously, as I said, this is not a personal thing.
Um, I would say the major failing in the blank ticket is that they have. Hold on. I remember back in the first flight administration, there was a lot of chaos in its cabinet, which he could pick himself from the very beginning. And I worry partly that White's picks in the cabinet, even if it's just the same, would be not the best, or there would be internal conflict in his administration. That would be my main concern.
Well, I mean, we do benefit from the new system that a president is forced to pick at least somewhat competent cabinet members because they have to pick from the Senate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not saying that his picks would be incompetent, rather would be internal division, maybe.
Oh, I see. Um, a lot of defenders of his administration say that he's or from being the first president, he was going through a lot of division, obviously as we've mentioned, but that is coming from a place of having to found the nation instead of inheriting a stable nation. So a lot of defenders of the Blight administration would say that that is why there's a lot of internal conflict in the cabinet, and instead of it being a personal failing of Blight itself. Would you agree or would you
I
disagree with that?
I would say it definitely plays a part in it, but wasn't the exclusive thing about it. If you had to build the government from down up, you have a lot of power in making sure the executive works together closely, or at least is more competent internally between each other.
From
And although
you keep going, you keep going.
the founding of the country plays a very large role in that, and you might not know as much as you do as you would now, I do believe that you are at least partially at fault.
What is? Say that again.
Um, is my mic not working? Or?
No, I think I just didn't catch it.
Oh, I would say if you're building a country from the ground up, which Flight did a very good job at, but you have a lot of power in what you're doing, especially if the cabinet in which you are directing.
Yeah.
So although the starting of the nation definitely played a role in the internal division there, it's still possible to build a stable cabinet.
Do you have any specific grievances that you're referencing when it comes to Blake's cabinet from his first administration?
Uh, I believe Anthony did a lot of resistance about blight policies. I feel like you can at least work to talk with them about policy, especially if they're leading a ministry. Also, Peppy, that entire situation, although Blight did clear quite fast, I feel like it could have been preventable, but I was there at the time.
Hmm?
Those are my main grievances, but
Okay. And what um, part of your experience can you give to assure other people that this will not be a problem with your administration?
I believe I can work closely and collaborate with many people in the Senate. It doesn't I believe that whoever I nominate for any position can do their job competently and that they understand what they're doing to the point where I would trust them more with the job than I would hold them theirs.
I mean, I mean in more of a direct action plan. So, like, what's your step by step to ensure?
Cabinet meetings are one thing that I would really love to do.
Okay.
I know that was one of Anthony's goals in his administration. When that never happened, I was quite disappointed. I feel like that's one thing that we can really do and step towards in order to make sure the cabinet is has a main goal in mind and can work together to execute the powers of the executive in a competent way.
Okay. Do you have any more pitches for you know, getting your policies, your campaign out there?
Um, I would say don't worry too much about the selection.
Yeah.
Don't get too stressed about it. Just watch it happen.
Yeah. We've been blessed with the second presidential election in a row where all the options have been very good.
You know,
Yeah.
the other thing I will say is that if I get elected, I will try to hear out every single person, and that if you have any specific policies that you disagree with me on, or anything you would like me to be aware of if I do get elected, just DM me or do something. I'll try my best to stay in contact.
All right. Well, Jester, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for setting it up.
Of course, we're going to be running a debate pretty soon after I get these interviews put up. And hopefully people have the time to come watch live.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm excited to debate Blight Live.
Yeah.
Well,
All
I
right.
assume it'd be live.
All right. Well, I'll see you then.
All right, bye, Rack. Have a great
Bye.
day.